I was involved in 4 events here. I spoke on international trends on the internet on Sunday evening. I then did a session introducing our acquisition of the ARS company and what that means, what kind of new services we're going to develop. I moderated an interesting panel yesterday, three separate presentations talking about the interaction between television and the internet. That was fascinating stuff. And then this morning, I presented with Hernan Lopez, who's the president of Fox Networks, a really interesting set of studies that we had conducted in the UK, where we examined the way that video online ads compared to display online ads cause changes in consumer behavior.
So in video ads?
In video ads, correct.
Okay.
So, what that was showing that's really interesting is that, first of all, both display and video ads drive visitation to the advertised brand's website. They drive trademark search queries, even if there are no clicks or minimal clicks. So one of the things this proved again, and I've been reputed to be on a drive to kill a click, which is probably correct. Clicks on display ads is just not a measure of the effectiveness of the ads. You need multiple exposures, there's latency, all of that stuff that people in doing research in traditional media have known for a long time. So what we found was that increased exposures of display ads continues to drive incremental lift. So you can go up to in excess of 10 exposures and still get more lift than you were getting with 5 with display ads, which is interesting. It suggests that you've got to keep pushing them out there, maybe because it's easy to miss one. And so the cumulative impressions is really important. Now, in contrast with that, when we looked at the effect of video ads, it's much more immediate, and you don't get the same increasing lift with additional exposures, which I think intuitively makes sense. It suggests that a video ad is inherently more persuasive and more effective, assuming the communication is the right communication, than a display ad, and you don't need as many impressions to get lift. The other thing we found was that video ads do lift site visitation search queries more than display ads, but both of them are effective. So that was interesting, and I think one of the now this was conducted in the UK, and it came on the heels of a study that we had published called Wither the Click Europe, and that followed Wither the Click US that we had published about 2 years ago that got a lot of attention. And what we found is that the response to display ads in the United Kingdom is higher than the response that one gets in the US. And the hypotheses as to why that is, there are fewer ads delivered per user in the internet in the UK.
So per page?
Per user over the course of a month. Yeah, so probably per page, probably less. The number of web pages is pretty similar that's viewed, but the number of ads seen is less in the UK, even though it's a very well-developed ad market. But you compare it to the US, and the US is higher. So it suggests that maybe there's less competitive clutter, and so that any one individual ad might get a lot more attention, or individual campaign could get a lot more attention. The other more provocative theory, and since I'm British, I subscribe to this one gladly, is that British creative is better than US creative. And that's been suggested in other media for some time. So it's very possible that could be a contributing factor as well. But nonetheless, in both the UK, Europe, and the US, I think what we have now definitively shown is that the click is just not the measure of effectiveness. Click rates are down to like 0.1% in the UK, and actually they're lower in the UK than in pretty much the other major countries. So it's not the measure, and you have to look at the impact of these ads over time. You've got to measure latency, And if you do that, I think you see very positive results. The click, especially the search click. By the way, when I'm talking about low click rates, I'm really talking here about display ads as opposed to search. But even search ads are running at around 4%, something like that. So, but significantly higher than display clicks. But I think the issue as to what form of advertising gets the credit for the sale online has been problematic, because it's easy to give the last click 100% of the credit. And if the last click is search, which often it is, because people are searching very often very close to when they're going to buy something, and so they way down the purchase funnel, if you will. And so it's easy to give the click the credit. Now, if one does that, though, one is ignoring all of the branding value that was built in by all of the other marketing that the consumer was exposed to that occurred before that last click. And so with these studies, what we're trying to isolate is the impact of a display ad compared to the impact of a search ad. And we've shown that, yes, a search ad might generate a higher lift, but its reach is nowhere near as high as you can get with display ads. And the synergy occurs when you run a display campaign as an overlay to a search campaign. What you then get is the reach of display, you get increased trademark search queries, you get lift from display alone, and you get lift from search, and then the combination of the two lifts it even more. And I think that that's the message that I think the agencies are now understanding. And you just really can't look at at them being two exclusive components, mutually exclusive components of a strategy. A well-integrated one, can work best. And it's no different to what I think has been found in a lot of traditional media. The argument has been made for years that you can use radio very effectively to reach the people that you can't reach with television, at a given point in time. And that's, I think, directly analogous to what we're talking about here with search and display. The answer is yes, that's where they're running. So it's possible that we are looking at results are in part a function of where the ads were running, because I think that the context is an important variable. But I would, given everything else we've seen in our research, there's no way that Fox can be the only set of sites that drives these kinds of responses. So I think we can generalize them to the internet in general. There were a couple of different video formats that were kind of mid-roll and pre-roll. They didn't require clicks to originate the ad, which is the interesting point. And we were able to determine if somebody saw the entire ad. So they had to see the entire ad to fall into this group of exposed panelists that we then measured. But again, the results I think were very encouraging and not surprising, given that it's been believed that sight, sound, and motion, which you can put into a video ad, inherently should make that type of an ad more effective than certainly a straight banner ad or even a rich media ad, and that's what I think we found. No, we looked at 4 different campaigns here. There was one for a utility company, there was a political ad, there was a financial ad, and there was a travel ad. And so some of them were running with a combination of display and video. Some were video only, and some were display only. And so we were trying to tease out the effects of the different formats, but we just didn't have enough observations to be able to say whether an ad in one type of industry is any more effective than an ad in another type of industry. We've done that in the U.S., and we've looked across, I think we looked across something like 7 or 8 different vertical industries: travel, consumer packaged goods, etc. And the response rates do vary by industry, and part of that is a function of how often one buys in a particular category. But you buy consumer packaged goods products pretty frequently, right? Everybody goes to the supermarket pretty much once a week, but you don't travel every week, and so that affects the response rates to some degree in terms of the lift that you get. I don't have information on the way that a different type of video format, for example, will generate sales increases. But that is a really important issue. And the next step in this research that we're going to be doing is we're going to try to conduct a study here in the US where our sample sizes in our panel are much, much bigger. And we're going to look at the impact of video versus display in terms of driving incremental buying of a product. So we're going to move beyond just looking at site visitation and trademark search. And what we want to know is, how do video ads versus display ads generate sales increases both in e-commerce as well as sales increases in a retail store? And we have enough sample size here in the US within the comScore panel to be able to do that. And I think we'll get a lot of interest in that kind of a study and trying to understand what the optimal frequency is. Now, there's another issue here that's really interesting, going back to increased response with increased exposure to display ads. The ad servers that are delivering these ads are set up to read whether or not there's a cookie on the browser of the machine to determine whether or not they're going to deliver it an exposure, right? Theoretically, that then allows you to set frequency caps. So you could say, I don't want a machine to get more than 4 ads or 5 ads or 6 ads. Theoretically, it sounds great. Problem is that people are deleting their cookies. And there are about 30% of the people delete their cookies in a month, and they're doing so about 5 times a month. So imagine the situation. Every time the ad server sees a machine, if it doesn't see a cookie on the machine, it thinks that machine has never seen an ad and just pushes an ad out. Well, in reality, if that machine's browser just had its cookies deleted, you are delivering another exposure to somebody who already had one. And the reality is that the number of exposures delivered, or the number of impressions delivered to an individual user in the online world, is substantially higher than was planned. All right, so that's an issue. Your reach is actually lower than you thought, and your impressions are higher. Well, the results of this study suggest that maybe that's not all bad, because what we're seeing is you need a lot of impressions, display impressions, to move the needle. And so I think that's also a pretty important piece of learning that I would think that the publishers and the agencies and the advertisers are going to be pleased to hear. So one of the issues that advertisers and agencies struggle with a little is trying to make sure that they get the reach that they're looking for in the online world compared to what they can get with television, which is a mass distribution vehicle. And that's a valid concern. I think, though, that the answer is coming with some of these targeting systems that are emerging, where you can buy a specific audience. All right, and so that kind of eliminates the waste if you're reaching the right target. You're getting what you want, and then the question is, are you delivering the right message against that that segment of people? And I personally think that that's going to be one of the next ahas, if you will, in this industry. The value of creative, because I don't think enough attention has been paid to it, and you can reach the perfect target segment that you want to reach, but if what you're saying to them isn't motivating or persuasive, you ain't going to get anything. It's like, I remember somebody once said to me in the traditional world, where we'd run a weight test of advertising and television with a piece of creative that didn't test out pretty well, and the incremental sales just didn't materialize from the additional weight. And I remember that the client said to me, well, Jen, you have to remember 4 times 0 is still 0. And his point was, if you've got a piece of creative that doesn't persuade, you can put as much weight behind it and reach exactly the right target, and you ain't going to get any incremental sales. So I think that figuring out the role of creative and improving the creative in the online world is something that's going to happen. And as more advertisers go to video, I think that's not an inexpensive format to develop, so you better make sure that you get the message right. I think that should lead to the emergence of a copy testing business online in a way that might mirror what exists in television today. I mean, you got to get that message right before you go off and spend a lot of money producing the commercial. And I think that the onus is going to be on the internet to do the same thing. Yeah, I think that if you look at television and compare it to the internet, the work that we've done indicates that you can get as much lift from an online ad as you do with a television ad, but in a shorter period of time. So the statistics are that in consumer packaged goods, as an example, if you take a look at all the behavior scan tests of television weight versus no television spending, on average, it generates an 8% lift at retail in sales of a CPG brand. So we duplicated those types of studies in the online world and ran online advertising compared to no online advertising, and then looked at the lift. And we got a 9% lift in a 3-month period with a 40% reach that we were delivering in these online campaigns. So the percentage increases, 8 to 9, are about the same, but it's happening in 3 months with the internet, where it takes 9 months with television. So, the question is, well, why is the internet working so well? I personally believe the answer is targeting. I think you can get a much narrower reach against your target segment with the internet than you can with television, which is just going to, any one television program, I think, is going to just have a broader distribution of demographics visiting it. And so the internet's got some great advantages. And if you look at those numbers in terms of the cost per point of lift, the internet is probably 3 times more cost efficient as television. But television ain't going away anytime soon, I'm sure.
So it's important to still have your media mix.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a question of either or here. I mean, like, with all of the viewing of online video, it still only represents a couple of percentage points of what, the amount of time that people spend watching television. And so I personally don't believe in, using one or the other. I think the smart advertisers are the ones that are combining it and probably adding in mobile and trying all of the other new platforms that are emerging. I think that following this study that we did in the UK, what we'd like to do is to measure the effect of video ads versus display ads in terms of their ability to lift sales. I think that's what we weren't able to do in the UK. We were looking at other behavioral metrics, site visitation and search, but we didn't have enough of a sample size to be able to look at sales. I mean, that's the ultimate metric that I think an advertiser wants. So we want to duplicate the UK study, but add a measure of sales and answer the question, and do it across a broad set of industries with a lot of different campaigns running, and answer the question, does video lift sales online and offline more than display, and how many impressions do you need? Is there an optimum number? And I think that'd be pretty valuable research, and no reason why. All we need is the cooperation, the participation of some advertisers and publishers to get this done. And Fox is very interested in doing it as well. I think will help lead the charge here.